Okay, we are getting started. Okay, welcome to our Grassroots Roundtable. This is a post-primary roundup to kind of wrap up to kind of talk about what we saw and what we experienced with historic numbers and all sorts of wild and crazy things here in Harris County. So let's introduce ourselves. My name is Diana Martinez Alexander, general shenanigan maker in Harris County with leftist roots. Pass it on to David Lopez.
Thank you, Diana. Hi, everyone. I'm David, uh, now newly elected precinct chair of Precinct 444 in Spring Branch,
Woo.
and co-shenanigan maker. Michelle.
Michelle Palmer. I'm also an educator in on the west side of Harris County. Also trying to, commit as many shenanigans as humanly possible. Make good trouble, as Diana likes to quote. And I'm always happy to talk about politics. I literally have a master's in this. So it is one of my favorite things to talk about. On to our other David.
Hi, I'm David Galvin, an oldly appointed precinct chair. Um, just kind of a general shenanigan pursuer, jack of all trades, and master of fun.
Yes, gotta love that.
Hi, I'm Dr. Virginia Lozando. I am about to be appointed precinct chair of my area, and I like to consider myself and my cohorts as community invigorators. We're trying to empower, and not empower, but help our community recognize their power and move forward to try to push a really strong message of equality and equity.
Excellent. So we're just gonna kind of parse out some of the big topics. By no means is this like exhaustive in terms of what we can discuss with this primary, but all eyes are on Texas. And so I'm really proud that we're doing the work on the ground to make sure that we're educating voters and building that momentum and that excitement. So we wanted to kind of share some of our takeaways, and I'll turn it over to David.
Great. Dana, did you want to do a quick overview of the topics, or do you want to just start?
If you want to just do the overview of the topics, yeah.
Oh, cool. Great. Well, on your screen, the 5 topics we're going to cover today are I'm going to cover the increased voter turnout. Diana's going to cover the Senate race, the Texas Senate race. Michelle's going to cover the local runoffs. Virginia's going to give us a little deep dive into Latino voter behavior for this past primary. And then David Galvin is going to talk about Congressional District 38. So I'll go ahead and jump in. I'm going to walk us through the voter turnout numbers for Tuesday's primary, what happened and maybe why it happened and what it means moving forward to November. Well, moving forward really to the runoff, and then to November. And I'm going to try to keep it as tight as possible here. So let's start with the headline. This was the highest turnout primary in Texas history, period. 4.5 million Texas voters voted across both primaries. The previous record was in 2008 when Obama and Clinton were on the ballot, and we just blew past it. And what matters for us is that 2.3 million of those ballots were on the Democratic side. That was more than the Republican total, and we haven't outpaced the GOP in a midterm primary in a very long time in Texas. The last time Dems led was the 2020 presidential primary, and that's a completely different animal. This is a midterm, and people showed up because they wanted to make sure their voice was heard. And bringing it home to Harris County, over 565,000 voters turned out here. That's also a record for Harris County for a primary, about 365,000 pulled Democratic ballot versus about 200,000 for Republicans. That's nearly 2 to 1. And during early vote alone, we had over 220,000 Democrats vote early in Harris County. And on election day, Clerk Hudspeth said there were still 700 plus people in line after 7 p.m. That just doesn't happen in low enthusiasm environments. So um, this isn't just a Houston story either. Harris County, accounts for uh, about 1 in every 6 Democratic primary votes statewide. So we are the engine for the state of Texas, especially in the Democratic vote. So what we do here echoes across the state. Um, so what is driving the surge here? This is just my opinion, please, and I'll pause after this for my um, fellow agitators, inspirers to jump in. But um, I think there are 3 things going on. One, the Senate primary, obviously. Tallarico versus Crockett was a real race. Both candidates were spending money, both were campaigning hard, and voters really had a genuine choice to make. And that kind of competitive primary pulls people to the polls, right? And over 2.2 million, I think it was, ballots were cast in just that one race. And, you can't overstate what a top of the ticket draw like that does for down ballot races and for precinct chair engagement. Um, and then, yeah, so the second factor, I think, was the Trump factor. I mean, we're seeing this nationally. We kind of predicted this early on, and I think it's very real that, college educated, high propensity voters are using every single election to register their opposition to the Trump administration. There are, it's also just not just anger, it's like consistent election after election engagement. These are people who are showing up for school board races, for special elections, and now for the primaries. And that matters because midterms are won by who actually shows up to vote. And then third, I think, is just part of a bigger national wave. I think since Trump took office in January 2025, like Democrats have flipped 9 GOP held state legislative seats in special elections, and Republicans have flipped 0. So, and right here in Texas, harking back to Taylor Remit's win, he won that state Senate District 9 special election in Tarrant County back in January by 14 points in a Trump district, in a district that Trump won by 17. That was kind of like a shot heard across the state. And for context, for folks listening, like in 2018, about 7% of Democrats voted in the primary. Beto came within 2.6 points of beating Ted Cruz that November. This year, 12% showed up, nearly double. So that should tell you something about where the energy is. Any additions from my fellow panelists here?
I
Yeah,
would definitely
go ahead.
say that the competitive congressional primaries also helped with that, because we had 22, which has a little piece of Harris County, 2 has a little piece of Harris County, 18 is almost completely enclosed within Harris County, 29 was a competitive primary, and 38 was a competitive primary, 36, which also has a small piece of, pardon my cat, of Southeast Harris County. I mean, there were a lot of, and then also House races, right?
Mhm.
There were several House races that were competitive, including one we'll talk about later.
Yeah, I was just going to add that, we saw another hint of what was coming in Leander, where there was a Black woman who won um, to be mayor in, historically Trump territory. So, I mean, the signs have been there, and I hope that we continue the momentum. I did have a first time voter who reached out to me and to get like tips on what to do and how to do it, and didn't know they couldn't take their phone in. And it was all so very cute and charming. And I loved it. But they spent 45 minutes to try to get to vote because their name wasn't registering. And so it took them a hassle. He said it was a nightmare, but it was worth it to be on the right side of history. And he said, I don't know if they try to stop me because I have like his hair is dyed like super bright red and kind of funky and awesome looking. And so he, feeling like maybe are they trying to deter him from voting? And that's the feeling, with Dallas and with other areas. Are we going to see more attempts to stifle this energy and stifle this vote? So that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, let Dallas serve as a PSA for people to go vote early. Please vote as early as humanly possible. Do not wait until election day because that's exactly what could happen to you. You might get there in line before polls usually close. They might extend it, they might revoke the extension. Your vote may or may not count if you wait till the last minute. So please go vote as early as possible.
Anything else there?
Just that it was really incredible to see that. I know that some of this is stemming from all the, like you mentioned before, the Trump effect with all the atrocities that we're seeing happening. And I think that people really feel that they need to stand up and they need to step up and they need to not sit back and be apathetic and think that this is something that it's impossible to win. And it's amazing to get to see that in Texas.
Absolutely. Well, great segue to November and beyond. I think we have some reasons for optimism, clearly. You know, and also we have to be clear-eyed. So on the optimism side, I think 158, some data here is 158 out of 254 Texas counties saw higher turnout than 2022. So that shows us that it's not just Houston and Dallas carrying the load here. That's energy showing up in places we don't always see it. And again, like mentioned, nationally, Democrats are overperforming in their 2024 margins by around 13 to 15 points on average in special elections. The generic ballot polling favors us heading into the midterms. And that special election track record, 9 flips, 0 losses, is a really strong signal as you get outside of an actual general election. Some cautionary tales, and we can bring those out, but primary turnout doesn't always translate. In 08, Democrats dominated the Texas primary, 3 million votes to 1 million Republicans, and then John McCain won Texas by 12 points. Texas is just still more conservative leaning, has more conservative leaning voters overall. We also know we're not, we're a non-voting state to combat that. And really, it really is just who votes. But I think swing voters in competitive districts are the ones who'll decide November, and it is on us to make sure we are talking to them and making sure that our strong Democrats come out to vote, and that also strong candidates will win. Strong candidates with the right message can hold this state on both parties. So we have something that we haven't had in a very long time, I think, a real shot. And a shot is not a guarantee. So that work between now and November is really what's going to turn our energy into outcomes.
We also saw a lot of energy happening because of those competitive primaries in districts that don't normally work their districts, like the reps don't work their districts, safe Democratic districts where the elected official doesn't work it, right? It happens far too much. And to me, it's the secret to flipping the state. If we can get the Democrats in those safe Democratic districts that don't go vote, because my reps got it, it's fine. If we can get them to vote, then we can flip the state, or at least come a whole lot closer than we have been.
It comes down to data, data, data. And so we need to use the data from this increased turnout to make sure that we're honing in on our targets and being as smart as possible. I'll leave that to folks to have access to Van since I do not. Okay, so are we good to move on to the Senate race? Because that's our next topic, and it kind of is a good segue because oh yes, we got to talk about the runoffs, but Michelle will touch on that as well. For the Texas Senate race, of course, we had a lot of extenuating circumstances, a crazy Republican primary to boot, and people being torn initially between Allred and Crockett. And then that was kind of like a pretty simple choice for me personally. But then it got, more complicated with Crockett running in the race and figuring out this impact of surge voters, who they were going to choose, and who were they excited about? Were they excited about Crockett? Or were they excited by Telrico? So it was hard to say what that was actually going to look like. And each candidate had strongholds. Of course, Crockett had Dallas County, and then Telrico had Travis County, and then Harris County was led by Crockett. But something surprising was the Rio Grande Valley. I didn't know how that was going to kind of, go. Wasn't sure which candidate appealed more in terms of addressing, issues that were concerns from the Latino community. And then, of course, you had the three-way race by more, well, there were more folks in the Senate race, but I would say there were three headliners in the Republican race, and then not knowing how Trump was going to factor in, who was Trump going to endorse. And then also, working with other candidates. These candidates, Crockett and Telrico, did go around with other candidates and which one was really going to make a difference. And then of course, another factor was in Dallas County, where there were the shenanigans of first not uploading the correct precinct maps, so people didn't know where they could vote. Then the factor of not allowing people to vote at every precinct. They had to find one that was special to their party. And then the website crashing, and all of that led to a lot of confusion. And to David's point, don't wait to the last day. So a lot of voters were unsure if their votes were going to count. There was an extension granted by a judge, and then Paxton, which seems very incestuous to me, put his finger on it and, got the Supreme Court to stop that extension of voting. So very suspicious, very sketchy. I know that if any Democratic candidate should say, let people vote, let those votes count. That is my hope. But at the end, we did have, and you can go ahead and go to Cameron County. I'm going to go there because this was kind of something that maybe help tip the scales towards Telrico. So Telrico did go and campaign with Bobby Polito, who was the very popular candidate for Congress. And so you can see the numbers, and I think it's shocking to me only, and I'm sorry if I step on your toes a little bit, Virginia, but I wanted to just talk about the impact of this race because the Latino vote has been like widely discussed, like who like went for more for Trump last time and now has realized that's not really serving their interests. So I kind of just took these numbers as an indicator that whatever honeymoon they had supporting Trump may be over. And now we have something that resembles, more what we see in terms of Latinos supporting the Democratic ticket. And then supporting Tallarico. I don't know if it's because Tallarico sounds, slightly like a Latino surname. And then also having the bonus of touring with Polito. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So where do we go from here? I just saw a news story. Obviously, Tallarico won the primary, and I I'll hop back to that in a second. But I just saw a news story just a second ago that Ken Paxton has offered to drop out of the race if Cornyn meets certain conditions, which I don't know what those are. That's a hot mess to me. Trump has also said that whoever he endorses, the other one has to drop out. So he's putting his tiny little hand on the scale. I it's it's such a freaking mess. Like both of those guys are trying to race to the bottom to figure out how like MAGA they can be and how they can earn the Trump endorsement because they think that is something of value. Um, Read the room, man. Like read the room. This is not 2020 anymore, and it's not funny anymore, and people are starting to really show their allegiance with their vote, and wanting to preserve democracy and, the Constitution. So going to Tallarico and Crockett, Crockett did concede. She immediately, to give her kudos, went to DC and gave Kristi Noem the what for in congressional hearings, which I absolutely adore. And, I'm wondering, will this voting momentum happen? Can we have healing? Um, are we are we going to benefit from Paxton and Cornyn spending a lot of money on their primary, should there be one? And that's what I really want to know is like, how can this healing happen on the Dem side to make sure that we're valuing our Black voter base and making sure that they feel included in this process? Because if you exclude that group, it's going to have really bad outcomes for our race. And with that, I'll open it to y'all.
I'll just say, going back to the Paxton story you alluded to earlier, from what I read on the Hill, his two terms were he wants the Senate to abolish the filibuster and he wants proof of citizenship for voting. And largely because of the first thing, Majority Leader John Thune has shot that down because we know the Senate's never going to get rid of the filibuster.
Thanks for that, David.
I hope they spend $50 million each ripping each other to shreds for the next 2.5 months. That will make me very happy.
Can we all talk about Ahmad Hassan for a second? How whenever his name showed up on MS Now, I was like, oh my God, cringe. In the picture, I'm like, a spoiler. Okay, go. Somebody else talk.
I just want to note the strength of Jasmine Crockett given the spending that Tallarico had. Like Jasmine and her supporters spent about $5 million, and Tallarico had to spend $25 million on ads. And it just goes to the power of and the importance of fundraising, I think, in these races, but also, the impact that Jasmine really had on a lot of the voters in Texas. So
I also think that a lot of people made their decision on this race even before she got in. And a lot of Democratic voters, once they've locked in on a candidate, they're locked in. They're not going to change no matter who else gets in. And he was running for a long time before she jumped in. So the fact that she got 46.2% and spent so much less money is pretty impressive to me.
And I'll also say, like, I mean, I'm sure we'll have to do like a little bit of healing, but it always seemed to me with this race, I'm so glad it didn't go to a runoff, that all the noise surrounding it was from outside agitators. I mean, I can't say I've spoken to any Tallarico or Crockett supporters that said they wouldn't support the other. It just seemed like it was all online, and it was all, ginned up to intentionally divide people. I mean, we're seeing this noise right now with Tallarico. It's like people are saying if he flips the seat, he's a 2028 contender. I'm like, can we just please take this one step at a time? Like, it just, you see enough of it, enough of the same people saying the same things, it just starts to become a pattern, and you can tell a lot of it is just phony. So I think we're in better shape than we might see online.
Okay, I'll ignore the James Carville effect. But I do I do want to like underscore the importance of, Tallarico explicitly courting Black communities and making sure that he's hearing them. So that would be my advice um, to them, that that needs to happen like straight away. Um, I don't know if y'all have thoughts on that, but I really do want that to be intentional as part of the strategy. And let's all like bid adieu to Wesley Hunt because I mean, poof, good riddance. Okay, and hopefully, um, Ken Paxton and John Cornyn will also be out of a job. So that should be the goal. All right, I'm done. We can go on to the next person.
I think that's me. All right, runoffs. So runoffs will be in May the 26th. In between there, Houstonians, we do have a city council special election, so that's to look forward to. So we have a lot of runoffs. If you are unaware, Texas is in the primaries, is a majority state, not a plurality state. In school board, it is a plurality. So first one, of course, we have CD 18, Christian Menifee and Al Green, two sitting Congress members running against each other. It's the youth and energy versus the age and wisdom. I'm not going to get into this. Everybody knows who I support. I'm no longer in this district. I was gerrymandered out of it. But it's definitely one that's got a lot of attention, and it's going to keep getting a lot of attention. Then on the state level, we have two statewide runoffs. We have lieutenant governor, where we have Goodwin and Velez, who are the two of them pretty much split most of the endorsements. I think Goodwin got more of them, but Velez got a lot of the union ones because he's a big union guy. And then we have Attorney General Johnson and Jaworski. Johnson got a lot of the endorsements in this one, probably because he's a sitting member of the State House, and that tends to draw endorsements. Kind of a yawner for me. I'm not real excited about that race, but I'm excited for the chance to get rid of Ken Paxton, or definitely getting rid of him as Attorney General and replacing them. Then, of course, close to my heart, State Board of Education, District 7 is the south side. And it's like Brazoria and Galveston and Fort Bend and like all those counties down there. And then part of southern part of Harris as well. Tiffany Perkins, and I believe it's Deborah Ambroise. I'm definitely, again, supporting Tiffany Perkins. I've made no secret of this. As a State Board of Education candidate myself, I think that she is the real deal. And I would love to see her in that position. And then we have state rep 131. This is the seat that Alma Allen is retiring from. Stephanie Childs, who's current State Board of Education for District 4, here in Harris County, is running for it. She almost won it outright. But now she's going to run off against Alma Allen's son, Lawrence Allen, who used to be on the State Board of Education. So two State Board of Education candidates running for that one. Actual State Board of Education members. And then my favorite one to say is State Rep 149, which is kind of the A-Leaf area. It's Bo versus Bro. That one just makes me laugh. That those are the two candidates that made the runoff. It's funny. All right, but on to the next one. There we go. So we have the 14th Court of Appeals, place 7, which is 10 counties, including Harris. This is William DeMond, who's run a couple of times for different offices, including the state Supreme Court, and Michael Adams Huerta. The two of them pretty much split the endorsements, both good candidates. Hopefully we can take some of the Court of Appeals seats back with all of this energy that we've got this year. And the 209th Criminal District judge race, we also have a runoff. It's the only one of the just Harris County judge positions that has a runoff. And this is Robert Johnson versus Sissy Kiles. Think for a second what her name was. And then another big one that a lot of people are talking about. This one I feel like has more animosity than the Senate race among supporters. Former Houston Mayor Anise Parker versus former City Councilwoman Dr. Letitia Plummer. This one I can see getting ugly. If the candidates don't make it ugly, I can see some of the supporters making it ugly. I see David unmuted himself. Does that mean you want to say something about that one?
The thing I'd flag about the judge race is how fractured the Republican side is. Parker she got 46.6. She almost cleared out, but there's still a lot of work to do for Plummer. I don't know, I'm supporting Plummer specifically, but anyways, on the GOP side, Sanchez got 26%, Howell got 20%, Langton got 20%. So their voters are so split and their campaigns are gonna have to spend so much money in the next 12 weeks. It's it's kind of like mirroring the Senate campaign a little bit. So our job is a little simpler. Again, once we decide, who's going to represent the Dems. But yeah, the Republican side was interesting on this one.
Yeah, when I created my my slideshow for my students, because I teach Texas government, I included both sides, and so we were definitely talking. Diana, I see you unmuted.
I did. So I think this is an important opportunity to hear both candidates in a debate type event where they can answer questions specifically, and head to head. So I look forward to that because I think a lot more will be illuminated once there are some questions, particularly on the HISD takeover, and we've been burned with Whitmire in terms of his Dino-ness, or Dino-ness, whatever. And I just feel like it's going to be really impactful to have some of that transparency.
Yes, agreed. And then we have two more. Oh, Virginia, did you have something?
Well, I wanted to say something. I'll let you finish the last one. I want to talk about some mechanics from the previous slide.
Oh, okay. District clerk is another one. This is one that had, I think it was 8 candidates or 7 candidates. I don't remember, but not a single candidate in this race got over 20%. So that tells me this was a super low information race, even though I saw at least 5 of these candidates multiple times. But the 2 that made the runoff are Daryl Jordan, who's a former judge, and I think it's Alex Maldonado, I can't remember first name, who's actually a teacher. When I met him. Diana, did you have something on that one? No, you're good. And then, oh, the J somehow fell off of my JP7. That used to be Justice of the P7. So this is just the P7. It's the only one that had 3 candidates, and it was a very contentious race. There was a third young lawyer in this race, because both of the 2 candidates that are remaining have some problematic areas. I'll just try to be political about it. And so that third candidate actually got quite a few of the endorsements, because of the fact that Melanie Miles has run as a Republican for judge a couple of times. And Judge Bernie has been talked about having a not great temperament on the whatever it's called when you're a judge. So yeah, some issues. All right, let's go, I guess, back to the other side, David, and Virginia.
Yes, I did. When we take a look at some of the races that we have on there, I did want to mention a couple of them. When it comes to State Rep 131 between Childs versus Allen, one of the things that I noticed and I looked at closely was when Childs got onto the State Board of Ed. I've seen some really incredible Democratic candidates get so much accomplished on the State Board of Ed. You know, like Aisha Davis and Georgina Celia Perez, who with a primarily Republican State Board of Ed, managed to get through additional funding for dual language programming to make the dual language program the program for the state. They got Mexican American Studies into schools as well, being given credit as an elected class. Aisha Davis spearheaded getting African American Studies in and was working towards Native American Studies and Asian Pacific Islander Studies. These were things they did with a primarily Republican board. I was excited to see the energy that came with Stacey Childs, but I did not see anything come out of it. And it almost felt like this was more of a stepping stone to move on to State House next. Some candidates do that. Some candidates do incredible things along the way, like Aisha Davis, who also ended up going to Texas House, but has passed some incredible legislation her first year in. Very all-star freshman. And but I'm not seeing much on her record as far as it comes to Stacey Childs. And so there are some concerns with her ties to charter schools and to the charter school system when it comes to her funding, who financed some of her campaign. But I have heard her speak on many occasions talking about charter school systems and advocating for that. So I look at performance when it comes to State Board of Ed, because that, like Michelle, that is one that's dear to my heart. And I really, my concern is like, we didn't get much accomplished there. What are you going to get accomplished at the state house? And so I don't have much confidence in that one. I do look at State Rep 149, and there we have Darlene Bro. Darlene Bro is a rock star. This is a woman who's advocated for kids, for communities, for families for a very long time. She single-handedly worked so hard to get the state of Texas to initiate some actual guidance when it came to students with dyslexia. She really helped write that handbook. And she has really been out there, and she's such a strong voice. She's been, a board member for Ailey for a long time as well. And she's really done a lot of work for the community. And so I think she is such a hard hitter that I really am looking forward to seeing her win this race so we can see what she does when she gets to State House. And it's not on here, but State Board of Education position 5, that's more like Austin and Pflugerville around there, is also in a runoff. And my dear friend, Allison Bush, not from those Bushes, her last name just happens to be Bush, but she's Democrat. She is actually running in a runoff. She got really close to winning as well, her seat. And so if you're out there and you have some ties in that area, in that community, please feel free to take a look at her as well. So I just wanted to give those shouts out.
Absolutely. Yes, she's a very exciting candidate. And that's a Democratic seat where the current incumbent is not running. So she would be a phenomenal choice for that race. That's all I have.
I just wanted to offer one thing. I know that somebody was offering $500 if they actually saw Hubert Vo in person. I don't know if that was ever given out, but I think the idea is that where has he been in the community? And so I guess I'm excited about having some people primaried because it makes sense. And then also just going back to the State Board of Education, we need to flip 3 seats, right? And Michelle's is one of the ones that are possible, attainable. And then we have 2 others, I think 7, and then one other, I can't remember.
8.
8. Okay, that's okay. Yeah. So anyway, we just have to keep the energy and the attention on those races as well.
Yeah, those are the ones that are here in the Harris County area. One down in the Valley, Thomas Ray Garcia is the Democratic nominee in that one. And if the Valley goes the way the Valley can go, then that's definitely a pickup. I think it's probably the easiest pickup we have.
Before we transition to Virginia, I just want to make sure everyone listening to this call or on watching the video, you got the dates locked in. Voter registration deadline for the runoff is April 27th. And obviously on the slide, runoff is May 26th. So, and there is a rule that may trip people up that if you voted in the Democratic primary during the primary on Tuesday, last Tuesday, you can only vote in the Democratic runoff. But if someone didn't vote at all, they can pick either party's runoff. So very interesting work for precinct level organizing. And yeah, so I think that second group is an opportunity for organizers because those are the persuadable people we can bring into the fold. And I think the judge race is obviously going to bring people out. Also, that clerk race was kind of wild. I mean, I saw a poll that like 86% of people, what did I see? 86% of people didn't know. 82% of Democratic voters said they did not know who they were voting for in that race right before the primary.
It was the county chair, I think.
No, I'm talking about the district clerk. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So anyways, on to Dr. Elizondo.
Hello, everybody. So, the Bobby Pulido effect. We know that it was really nice to see, if you heard his platform and the way that he was speaking, he really was doing a lot of justice to really looking at the basics. And what I'm showing you here is actually a poll that was conducted by Unidos US. And they took a look at heavily primarily states here that have large Latino populations. And they asked them what was most important to them. And as you can see here, the cost of living, inflation, jobs in the economy, housing affordability cost, these are kind of what's on the high end. And I've seen this poll done before in previous years, and you'll notice kind of a similar pattern. Now, one thing Unidos Does US that I really appreciate is they actually break it down into if you're Central American Latino, if you're South American, if you're Mexican, if you're Cuban. One thing Latinos we know for a long time is that they always clump us in with Cubans. Cubans have a history of voting Republican heavily. And so it skews our numbers. So people go, well, Latinos did this, Latinos did that. And you're like, wait. Take a look at which Latinos did it, right? And so it's nice to get to see that. But what was fun is when I went through here and broke it down by the different groups, you will notice that the important issues stayed the same. The most heavily impacted was the cost of living, was jobs and economy. It was the same sentiment throughout, which was nice to see. One thing that we also saw that was kind of unique was that you saw the Cuban numbers that were primarily saying Republican. And this is a bipartisan poll that was taken. You actually saw that decrease this time around. and where you saw now the Cuban kind of split 50-50 between Democrat and Republican from the people that were polled. One of the things that we're going to notice about in Texas is that when they talk about the swing state, right, they talk about the swing voters. What really has turned out to be the swing voters has been our people in the Valle, the people in the Rio Grande Valley, Bexar County, Webb, Cameron County, Hidalgo. That's where you're seeing this kind of flip-flopping happening, where you did see an increase of people voting Republican. And I will tell you that that community for a long time has felt ignored. It was just people just said, oh, they're going to vote Democrat just because of the color of their skin. And you saw the Republican Party and officials come in and build community centers and build clinics, and they were investing in the Valley. And so when we would talk to folks in the Valley about their opinions, and they would quickly say, well, this is who we see here. This is who's helping us. This is who's doing something. And so you started to see that vote flip, and you started to see more and more Latinos in the Valley voting Republican. But the great thing, or the thing we're noticing now, is that, like, when we take a look at the Talarico-Crockett race, when you looked at such a high numbers of voters that Crockett gained in Houston and Dallas, and then you took the voters that Talarico got in the Valley, and they equaled each other out. They minus each other out, right? So that's why him getting Tarrant County, him getting Austin, those numbers, the rural counties he was getting, is what got him the win. When Beto ran and Beto lost, Beto didn't carry the Valley. He didn't win the Valley during his race. So if he had, he probably would have won that election. And so what people are starting to notice, including, our Republicans, are starting to realize that, oh my God, we need to start paying more attention to this group that, to be honest, not a lot of people paid attention to for a long time. And so one thing Talarico did is he worked with a lot of Spanish influencers. He did a lot of Spanish commercials. Like he went out with Bobby Pulido, who everybody loves, and he, really paid attention to that community. And so you saw it in the results with the fact this group in the Valley had voted for Cornyn. So, and I think that's why you're starting to see the Republicans kind of decide between Paxton and Cornyn. They're kind of thinking, oh, maybe we need to go with Cornyn, no, because he probably has a better shot of gaining that vote. Because what it's looking like is that could be the very swing part of Texas, is all this Latino group that you're seeing that isn't necessarily going solid Republican or Democrat anymore. So you're not sure which way they're going to go. And I think you're going to see a lot of that kind of thing happen. I like to believe that may be one of the reasons that Kristi Noem is out the door. As of today, just the idea that they're trying to see how can we make up with the Latino community, because a lot of these folks, as they get interviewed and polled, that are the Latinos that have voted Republican and voted for Trump, are saying this isn't what we voted for, right? We didn't vote to be racially profiled. You said you were just going to take the criminals, and instead you're breaking up families. You're taking people that are working people. You're doing all these things that you told us that you were after the criminals. And some of them are getting very upset because they're getting pulled over. They're getting asked for identification. And it's like, hey, they're just looking at your skin, and, you may have voted Republican, but when people look at you, they see brown. They don't see Republican or Democrat, right? So I think what we're noticing, that difference, is that you're seeing what an impact that's making in with the Latino vote, and I think you're going to see a lot of that more of that vote be courted this time around when people are running, especially in the Senate seat. And I think that's where you really saw that difference, and I think that's what's getting people excited about a potential flip in Texas, is in that Latino vote and voice. And I really, I think that we saw the increase in numbers, and I like the fact that we're seeing people vote for what they believe in and not necessarily just sticking with a party. And they're seeing the cost of living has gone up. You're seeing that job creation and the economy isn't going the way you want it. You're seeing that people are being priced out of their neighborhoods, and it's so hard for our younger generation to buy a home. All these things are happening, and so they voted one way, but they're not seeing the results from that and the things that they were promised. And so it's nice to see that, but that lets you know that this is definitely a fickle community when it comes to what results am I going to get? Because the same way they moved away from the Democratic Party because they weren't seeing the results they wanted to see and they saw the implications happening, they now have moved away from the Republican Party for similar reasons. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that works out. Yes. Does anyone want to share their thoughts?
I'll just say it's also wonderful having a gubernatorial nominee with roots in the Valley as well. I think between like Gina Hinojosa and Tallarico, Polito, it seems like we have several candidates this cycle that are taking the Valley pretty seriously in ways that I hadn't seen in years past. So it's pretty refreshing.
Definitely. I mean, another thing, they've talked to people in the Valley when it came to business owners and a lot of small business owners there. And what they noticed was the negative impact this type of immigration tactics that they're using now has impacted their businesses because in the Valley, it's a tendency for people from Mexico to go shop in the Valley, right? They would go pass through the border and go and spend their money in the Valley buying things. And they don't feel welcome anymore. And so the Mexican residents aren't going into the Valley anymore, and they're not shopping at those businesses. And so those businesses are losing a lot of money in that sense. And then they're also seeing what kind of the way that they're being rated by ICE, the construction companies and other places. And they're finding it a hard time getting employees in order to complete their projects. And so you're starting to see less homes being built, less businesses being built because they just don't have the workers. And so they're seeing some real financial negative impacts as well. And so those same business owners and who may have voted Republican are realizing that it was not the right decision for their business, for their personal finances as well.
It's like buyer's remorse. I
Yes.
see it as buyer's remorse. But are we going to go beyond, strongly worded emails and go into action? Speaking to your point, Virginia, what are they actually going to do to make sure that they stand up against these policies? So I agree that the support may be short-lived if there's not any action behind it.
Absolutely. I think that this is kind of a call to both parties that if they want to get this vote, if they want to get this support, that they need to show up. They need to show up and they need to be there to support and also to help educate, to also help organize. And and this is also a call to the nation, right? Because I've worked and spoke to a lot of folks that work nationally, and they had given up on Texas, or they put very minimal resources in Texas or people and staffing in Texas because they felt like Texas was like, we'll try, but it's not like we're going to focus on these other places. And I'm curious to see what kind of attention we're going to get because of this, if we're going to see some actual investment from some of these national organizations and advocacy groups when it comes
That's a good point. I just don't want those outside consultants, stirring the pot when they don't know just because they want to make money.
No, I think they should just give the money to the people that are working here. Yeah, they can fund us. That's how they can support us.
I'll just add that, yeah, Virginia, what you said resonated. I think when Trump said Democrats use you for your votes about Latinos, I think that message did land with some people because there is a little bit of a kernel of truth to it. And I think that the answer isn't to get defensive on the Democrat side, is to actually deliver. Tallarico is going to have to be very clear on, on wages, on healthcare, on housing, like what's the path to citizenship. Like working people don't care about candidates' talking points. They care about their paycheck and whether their family is safe. And that's what right now, right? I think that same Unidos US poll said that 40% of Latino primary voters said their economic situation got worse this year. A third said Trump's immigration enforcement is violating people's civil rights, which should have been 100%, but the deportation rates, the cost of living, the war, it's all hitting at once. So, I mean, I think, yeah, Trump is doing us a lot of favors by Like honestly, delivering on what he said, which for me is a dissonance because I don't think he's doing anything he didn't say he was going to do, but I I read it wrong, or I read it differently than some of my Latino brethren. But that's okay. I think we have our chance here. So
Yes, and we can go on to the next. Unless anyone else has something to share.
we also have a presentation about world's largest coral reef systems. I'm just kidding. No, we don't. I'll forgive you.
That was funny.
I'll just I don't have a presentation, but I'll just chime in about CD38. You know, both of them. The Democratic primary turned out to be not as contested as we thought. I know there were three candidates running. You always worry about, more than two going to a runoff, someone playing spoiler. That really just wasn't the case. Melissa was the nominee last go around, so she still has tremendous name recognition. She's a guerrilla marketer, guerrilla campaigner. I mean, she gets out, she gets everywhere. She's recruited candidates for the state house. She's recruited precinct chairs, and I think she just had a lot of name ID in a way that the other two didn't. In fact, she won every precinct from what I could tell. I mean, she won pretty much every precinct, and you can almost say the same on the Republican side as well. I know the Republican primary is going to a runoff for 38, but really that's just virtue of there being 10 candidates in the field. Uh, John Bonk got 46%, and Shelley DeZavallos is number two, but I mean, she really, I think, got like 12 or 13,000 votes. It seemed like every other candidate in that field was trying to catch up with Bonk. You know, I know the Chronicle had endorsed Larry Rubin, for all the good newspaper endorsement does in a Republican primary, but that got him all the way to 7%. And him, that endorsement and all his signs plastered all over West Houston, that's what that got him. But that combined with the 10% I think that Michael Pratt got was enough to play spoiler from Bonk getting to a healthy majority. So they're heading to a runoff, but I don't think that's really going to help much on our side because Bonk's got money to send mailers like 4 or 5 times a week. He's got the Ted Cruz endorsement. We saw that paid dividends for Jessica Hart Steinman in District 8 because she got almost 70% of the vote. So I know we don't like that human slime ball of a senator, but it seems to work with the Republican base. People seem to listen to him, and they get his endorsement, they get access to his funds too. So I think Bonk's going to be the nominee that Melissa faces off against in November. And I'll just add like one thing about CD18. So we knew once Al Green jumped into that race that was very likely going to head to a runoff. Christian won that election. He won the seat in January, and then Al Green switched over once he got drawn out of his other district. Pretty razor thin. Christian did quite well in Harris County writ large, but Green won enough precincts and also ate into enough of his margin in Harris County to really have an impact. But the most striking thing is it's a tale of two counties now because it extends into Fort Bend, and Al Green won every single precinct in Fort Bend. It just wasn't even a question. So I think this is going to be, I think it's going to be a razor thin margin. We're going to see which candidate has better name ID and better turnout. Christian's had to campaign for just so many months now. We'll see if that continues to work for him, if he can keep having the wind at his back. But it seemed like, Amanda Edwards kind of waited until the last minute to drop out, and she still got like 7,000 votes. And her having run against Christian in January, we'll see if any of those voters go into his camp or if they go to Al Green. You know, flip a coin, see what happens. So, as Michelle covered earlier, we have a lot to watch out for this May. So, stay tuned.
with US 38, I think for myself, I was an 18. And when I saw the first preliminary, like rough scale map that they put out, it looked like I was going to be in 29. And then I found out later that I was in 38. And so I think what's really frustrating as someone who's newly been abducted into another area is that it just didn't really give me much time. Like when I thought I was in 29, I kind of was like, oh, Sylvia Garcia, I know her work. I know what she's done. I know her history. And for me, I felt like, okay, that would be I'd feel comfortable voting for that. And I think that in 38, I just feel like I just didn't have as much time as I wanted to really think about the candidates. I did vote for Marvelette. And so, because I did meet her and I did get to speak to her, so that made the difference for me. But I kind of feel like being a newbie to 38, it's a little frustrating. And I hope we, have, if we're going to stay in 38, I mean, who knows what they're going
Yeah.
to do next?
And that's the whole thing about all this is just like a totally unprecedented mid-decade redistricting, just a few years after we already changed our congressional districts. I mean, I remember when we had like the regular redistricting, I talked to several, well-informed voters that didn't realize they were no longer in Lizzie Fletcher's district, that they had been moved to a newly drawn district, specifically for Wesley Hunt, who lost to Lizzie Fletcher in 2020. And I'll just say, like, leaving Congress after like 3 or 4 years after having a district drawn for you for an ill-fated Senate run where you don't even win any precincts in your district. Like, I don't know what the end game is here for Mr. Hunt, but I mean that's pretty embarrassing. I mean, how much
He
can you
didn't even
really
stay
hate?
long enough to get the pension.
Yeah, that's another good point. I mean, it's like, how much can you really hate a job that you don't go to? I mean, he's missed like hundreds of votes. I mean, nobody no shows like him. So I don't understand why you would trade one chamber you don't like for another chamber where the people in that chamber seem to like it even less. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I do want to add that probably the congressional map changes, those are built to confuse voters, and it further adds to voter suppression. So I mean, it's just a problem. I mean, we saw that directly in Dallas, right? With the new maps and the new precincts and all of that. It was wielded as a weapon to discourage turnout. So. That's a fine note to leave it on.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to say that I was very heartened by the amount of folks that we saw get out, the amount of people who were like determined to vote. I was at a polling location by my house, and some were like, okay, where else can I go and vote? Because if this one's not working, and let them know where to go. Um, and there was a determination to stay in line, to make sure that their vote was they were there, even though the lines were long, they were willing to wait. And that to me means something, that it is powerful. People are ready for something, and we just have to hold on to that. And I hope that, we continue that work.
And I hope that we can grab onto some of this attention that we're getting to have people come out to school board district races, because we do have one, here in May. For those races that are out there in May, I hope to see people take advantage of voicing their vote, taking their vote into the stands, so that we can actually see some turnout. Traditionally, it's been a very low turnout for school board races, so it'd be really great to get to grasp onto some of this new attention.
Anything else, anybody? No? Okay. Well, I hope that you enjoyed our conversation. I always like breaking things down with my um, political nerdy friends. And I know these are just our personal, opinions, and we've been in the streets learning some stuff. And so I think it's important, for us to share that conversation, but also knowing that we are also continuing our path of learning as well. So appreciate y'all sitting with us and talking with us. And if you have further questions, I continue to do my updates every morning, and I'd be happy to address some of your questions in those conversations. So, okay. Well, thanks everyone. I had fun.
Thank you. Bye.
Same.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.